Let's look ahead at tonight's Spurs Knicks game and ask, what's ailing the Spurs of late?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Emily Swallow, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
Welcome back to Locked On Spurs right here on the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Kens 5 San Antonio. Glad to have you back. Hope everybody's having a great work week. We'll get you through it right here on Locked On Spurs. Subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get favorite podcasts, including the Kens 5 Plus app and so many other platforms. So what are we talking about today? We're going to be looking at tonight's game, Spurs Knicks. Just give you the game out of the Big Apple. And later on the show, we're going to bring our guest, Joe Garcia of Two Shot Cats. You see, we're going to be talking about what's been ailing the Spurs of late. And yeah, is it time to just end this whole Sochan at point guard experiment? Well, we'll see what we have to say about that and much more on Locked On Spurs. And you guys are every year, so thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first each and every day. All right, let's go ahead and look at tonight's game, Spurs Knicks. The Spurs come into tonight's game 3-4 on a 2-game losing streak. The Knicks are 3-4 as well. As mentioned, the Spurs are coming off that road loss to the Pacers, 152-111. Wemby, here's your Wemby watch. 13 points and 10 rebounds. Not a good shooting night for him. Hopefully he'll shake that off and give the folks out at MSG a performance. All lights will be on him. All eyes will be on him and the mecca of basketball. We'll see how he does in his first game in MSG. We got to look at Zach Collins as well. In that game, he had 14 points and 5 rebounds in that loss to Indiana. Popovich did give him a shout out at the end, saying only 2 players actually showed up for that game versus Indiana. And he mentioned Zach Collins, so he has Pop's seal of approval right there. Doug McDermott, you know it's a long night for the Spurs when Doug McDermott is your leading scorer versus the Pacers. 17 points off the bench. Once again, Devin Vassell was out with a groin injury. The latest Spurs IR report is that there's a chance that Devin may play today versus the Knicks, and Keldon Johnson is probable to play. Apparently he has some soreness, but all signs are pointing that he should be in gear tonight. And yeah, Spurs are definitely missing Devin Vassell, that leadership, that defense, that scoring output, that extra option on the offensive end to go to. Not to say that Keldon has not been doing that. He has double-figure scoring and to start the season, and I believe like 5 in the last 7 games. Nevertheless, to have that extra punch, Devin Vassell, hopefully he does play. We'll see how the Spurs will, definitely benefit from that big piece of this year's squad and MSG. You're looking at the jerseys. In case you're a jersey watch person, the Spurs will be in their association jerseys today. That's basically they're all white uniforms. So what are we looking out for today? What are some things that we're going to be keeping an eye on should the Spurs either get a W or get an L? Hopefully they get that W and get that 2-game losing streak out of their mouth. Let's start on the Knicks side. So the Knicks have won 2 straight games at MSG versus San Antonio. Historically, the Spurs, well, they have a hard time handling the Knicks, whether the Knicks are at the bottom of the East or on the rise. The Knicks always give the Spurs fits. Numbers prove that. 2-game losing streak to New York on the road at Madison Square Garden. So hopefully the Spurs will erase that. Now, the key today, the Knicks have out-rebounded opposing teams in 7 straight games. So they're definitely cleaning the glass. And the Spurs got to keep control of that glass tonight. That's what gets the Knicks going. If they're rebounding the ball, if you're seeing those stats lean towards the Knicks side at halftime, into the first, into the third, well, brace yourself. It could be an L for your Spurs. But there's good news. Keep your eye on the halftime score. If the Knicks are down at halftime, they're winless this season. They're 0-4. So definitely be keeping an eye out on that. It looks like the Knicks cannot recover from a deficit coming out of halftime. So I mentioned about how the Knicks are pretty good at rebounding. We mentioned that they have out-rebounded their opposition in the last 7 games straight. Spurs, kind of probably going to lead into our next segment, but they've been out-rebounded in 2 straight games on a 2-game losing streak. Boards are key for this Spurs. They obviously got to get the rebounds, and they want to go in transition. They haven't been doing that well. And they're not cleaning the glass whatsoever in the last 2 games. Could explain why the Spurs are struggling of late. More on that in just a few minutes. And points. Yeah. In the 4 losses for your Spurs, they're averaging 107.3 points per game. Now in the NBA, in today's standard, that's pretty low. So hopefully Devin Vassell will come back, give them that punch that they need on the offensive end and defensive end, and hopefully your Spurs will get a W. So Spurs Knicks today out in MSG. It's an early start, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. So get ready. Hopefully the Spurs can get a win. Coming up next is Joe Garcia with Two Shots Podcast. We're going to be asking the question, what has been ailing this in the last few games? And then ask, is it time to end the Sochan experiment? Coming up next right here on Locked On Spurs. But first I want to talk about PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports DFS platform in North America. They are the easiest, the most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. That's it. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, it's just you. You pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 players stat projection and watch the winnings roll in. So with basketball season here, your Spurs are in action. You can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League. That's a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. So for example, Keldon Johnson and Travis Kelce. You pick a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions, and then you have some fun. So if you want to play along some of PrizePicks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill, comedian Andrew Schultz, now you can find community plays under the promo tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in PrizePicks communities each week. PrizePick even offers reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players get injured. So how does that work? So for football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second half, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance policy. So you got to get that app right now. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA right now. Use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Code is LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy.
Hey guys, this is Jason David Frank, the Green Ranger, and you are listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia. It's morphin' time.
And as promised, we are now joined by Joe Garcia of Two Shots Podcast. Follow him on X at Two Shots Podcast. He also has something on YouTube. It's a very, very fun show. It is the Alamo City Sports Podcast. Go check it out. He'll talk about that shortly. Joe, how you been?
Doing good, man. Just got out of work here. What day is it today? Tuesday?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
hey,
getting out of work.
Full disclosure. We tell everybody how for the first time ever you had tech problems, not me?
Yeah, it was. I
want to swim in that. I want to revel in that.
No, for the first time, I actually had like a video update. I had to update my NVIDIA graphics card on my gaming rig. So that had to get updated in order for me to go ahead and finally join Jeff here on Lowe's. And then there was another issue with video acceleration. So I had to adjust that. And now everything's fine.
I just like the fact that I was on this side of the fence for one of the rare times, Joe. So forgive me for just relishing in it. But hey, Joe.
You caught me in between updates.
Yeah, I caught you between updates. All right, Joe, let's go and dive right into this. The Spurs are heading into tonight's game versus the Knicks on a 2-game losing streak. They got destroyed versus Indiana. They, lost a 20-point lead versus Toronto in their gym. What do you think is wrong with the Spurs? What is ailing your silver and black right now?
It's just the little nuances. Again, it's a lot of the team defense, basically, transition defense was killing them in this last outing against the Miami, against the Pacers.
Right.
And the thing is that the Spurs just didn't match the energy. They fell behind early, just couldn't match the energy. Their shots weren't falling. They were just very lackadaisical on defense as far as the team goes. And the rest was history. When you let a team drop 152 points on you, you didn't have a good defensive showing. And the same thing happened to them when they fell behind early and they lost that other big game that they had early on in the season. So hopefully they can clean some things up with their team defense and along the other routes of some other little things that I bet you Coach Pop has already pointed out to them.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can remain a little bit more competitive. They do have another game coming up against the Knicks, an early tip.
Yeah, we'll see. I think on the defensive end, you're obviously seeing the loss of Devin Vassell now ahead of tonight's game versus the Knicks. He is doubtful. That he's not a scratch, but there's a possibility he could play. Devin Vassell is sorely missed on both ends of the court. You're seeing the defense flounder. You're missing that steady force. Not to say that Wemby can't be that, but Wemby had an off night versus Indiana. He shot horribly from the field. Team defense is a big issue right now. I think that's just a lot having to do with the different rotation. Malachi starting, Devin's out. They got to adjust to that. It was the second game of a back-to-back. They clearly looked like, look, this team got punched in the mouth fast and they couldn't recover. So that leads to what I think is ailing the Spurs is inexperience. I think this is just a sign of a team that still needs to come together, gain that experience, learn how to maintain big leads and not blow it like they did versus Toronto. Learn how to take a punch in the mouth and then get back up and punch back. We did not see that versus Indiana. So and also too with Wembanyama, you're still seeing his evolution, his NBA education. He has that phenomenal game versus Phoenix, and then he's been kind of quiet of late. Not to say that he's not helping the team. He did have a double-double versus the Pacers, but it wasn't that explosion that we saw versus Phoenix. If he had that game versus Phoenix versus Indiana, maybe the outcome isn't as bad. But the point is, for me, Joe, it's just a lot of inexperience is showing right now. Malachi gets into the starting job. He has to adjust to that. Joe, what do you have to say about the experience factor for this team?
There's a lack of experience. You have a lot of young players on this team. The only way they're going to wind up getting better is they're going to have to go through some of these really gut-wrenching and disheartening losses. Yeah, much like they did against the Toronto Raptors, and then they fell behind early and just got demolished by the Pacers. Those games are going to go ahead and hopefully teach this team something where they have to go ahead and get better. They know that they have to play for a full 48 minutes. That's something that Coach Pop has been preaching to them. Hopefully that'll start sinking in. They can start communicating a little bit better out there on the court. Again, inexperience at times is really showing its ugly head. All in all, though, if they can go ahead and clean some of these things up, they can remain very competitive and give themselves an opportunity to win in close games. And they've shown they're not the old Spurs, that we once knew, where they just couldn't come from behind. This is a team that's built a little different. So they can remain competitive in the fourth quarter, and it's around 8, maybe 6 points. They can go ahead and steal that game on the road or even at home. So they need to play better.
Yeah, Doug McDermott said after the loss versus the Pacers that they'll learn from this. Popovich has been using phrases, especially the game after Toronto, saying education, learning. So they understand. Look, kids. If you thought just because they won the lottery and got Wemby, that was it, smooth sailing, rebuild over, that's not the way it's going to go. They still need time to come together. I look at the situation, Joe, and right now it's just a bad mix. That's all it is. It's a bad mix of inexperience, an injury to a key player, a second game of a back-to-back, Wemby still education, a different lineup with Malachi coming in. We'll talk about the Trey Jones Sochan situation in just a few seconds. So it just feels like a bad mix. But the good news is, Joe, is that it's at least it's early in the season, right? Hopefully they'll get this out of their system early and not later in the season.
Yeah, it is a bad mix. It's just little things that the Spurs have to get through as a whole, and Coach Pop is there to try to guide them through this trajectory that they're on right now, which is they'll look like world beaters one game, and then they just don't play very good the next 1 or 2 games. And I think that's going to be conducive to what's going to happen for the rest of the season with this young team who was still learning. They're going to be put in some situations where it's not going to look good for them, but then they're going to be able to battle back in, and they're going to give Spurs fans hope, and they might get the game close and they might lose, or they might come from behind against a really good team and win, or just beat a good team and blow them out of the water, where they have no business winning. These are some of the things that we've seen them do, even going back to last year. This year now with Wemby, the team looks a little bit different. Hopefully now that they're going to start learning a little bit more, putting some things together, and really going ahead and remaining competitive for the full 48 minutes. That's the key. I think Coach Pop wants them to remain competitive for the full 48 minutes to give them a better chance of winning these games. They can't fall behind by 15, 20 early on and not match the team's energy and not have their 3-point shots falling, not have their mid-range shots falling, and then taking poor shots, and then turning the ball over. That's a recipe for disaster. So they need to just clean those things up, and they're going to be fine, I think.
Yeah, right now the Spurs statistically are giving up 125 points per game.
Ouch.
That's not a good thing. Giving up 152 ain't helping your cause as well. That's going to bump the numbers up.
They were dead last, weren't they, last year in defense? And now
they're still at the bottom of the barrel. Hopefully that'll change as the season goes on, and they'll try to do that today versus the Knicks in MSG. So poor defense on the perimeter, on transition defense. I mean, Indiana, how many threes did they make that night? I mean, they were just on fire. And then inexperience and changes and whatnot, losing Devin Vassell, all for a bad mix. That's what's aiding your San Antonio Spurs right now. Coming up next, we're going to ask the question, is it time to end the Sochan point guard experiment? We'll hear what Joe has to say and myself as well. Coming up next right here on Locked On Spurs.
Hey, this is Chris Sabat, and you're listening to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
But first, I want to talk about FanDuel. You got to get FanDuel right now. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get themselves $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Go get FanDuel right now. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, right now is the best time. You got to get into the action right now. The app is easy to use. They got spreads, player props, a wide range of betting options, all in one app. Another reason to get FanDuel. Look, you want to go to FanDuel.com/LockedOnNBA right now. Kick off the NFL season. I have it. I'm looking at those numbers on the NBA side. Your Spurs are back in action. So have some fun watching the Silver and Black do its thing. Or you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. I don't know about that. But if you are, get FanDuel right now. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. I also want to talk to you about Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. Go to Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee right now if you're in San Antonio. 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive. Open every day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. They are a proud local sponsor of Locked On Spurs. The first local sponsor of Locked On Spurs. Look, they have so many drinks for you to choose from. They have a wide variety of drinks from dairy alternatives to their coffee, their signature coffee as well. You got to try it, the Mudslinger. And even specialty drinks. They have the Alien. You should know who that's about. That's about Wemby. That's a full can of Red Bull, green apple, kiwi, mixed together. Very delicious. If you want a dairy alternative, they have the OG OJ. That's the Orange Julius, recreated only at Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee. They have even a drink in honor of UTSA's Frank Harris called the Sub-Zero. What more do you need? Go to Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee right now. Look, over 300 5-star reviews cannot be wrong. And they're very interactive on social media. Find them on Threads, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. The list goes on and on. X at Mudslinger, SATX, all one word. They got mini donuts, everybody. See, they're not just about drinks. They got mini donuts as well. I hear those are very, very good. I'm probably going to go get that right now. A mini donut and a drink. Sounds a perfect combination. Go to 2404 Thousand Oaks Drive. That's in the 281-1604 area right now. Again, open every day, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Go to Mudslingers Drive-Thru Coffee right now. Life is too short for bland coffee. Let's go to bring back our guest. He is Joe Garcia, Two Shots Podcast. There he is. No tech issues, Joe. You're good? You're
no
good?
Tech issues. Good for now.
Okay, we're good. We're good. It's good to be on this side of the fence for once, Joe.
Nah.
We are talking all things silver and black. Make sure to follow Joe on X at Two Shots Podcast. So, Joe, this has been a buzz with Spurs fans since the start of the season and up until tonight ahead of the game versus the Knicks. And that is Sochan at the point guard spot. A lot of fans are flipping tables. They don't like it. I think there's maybe a small minority of fans that are okay with it. But the vocal segment of the Spurs fan base is it's got to end. Joe, where do you stand? Is it time to end the Sochan point guard experiment?
It's time, man. That's not Jeremy's natural position. He didn't play that in high school. He didn't play it in college. And now he's at the pro level, and you want him to magically somehow learn how to play the point position when it doesn't come natural to him. Why do that to somebody? You know, he needs to be set loose, needs to be he needs to go ahead and play at his natural position. Go out there, be a pest defensively, go get rebounds, go after the 50-50 balls, knock down a mid-range jumper or maybe a three-pointer every now and then. But this is a failed experiment. I don't know how much longer Pop is going to keep on doing this, but it needs to end. It needs to stop.
I think it'll stop if more L's start racking up. You know, if the turnover discrepancy is large. Now, to credit Sochan, his assists are there. The numbers do show it, that he's getting better with each and every game. The problem is that he's still in that education process, and he's going to have moments where he coughs the ball up, or somebody picks his pocket, or he makes a bad pass. But at least he's trending in the right direction. So, but I understand that, you would like to see Sochan go to a natural position, be what we saw last year in his rookie year. And again, I see that side of the fence, but Joe, I'm going to try to be devil's advocate here. I said, okay, fine. Let me think of a reason why Sochan should stay at the point guard spot for now, and Tre Jones coming off that bench. For me, Joe, it's just simply two things. One, I would like to understand if the Spurs just want to see what Sochan's potential could be. Can he be that combo player? Can he be that switchable, positionless guy? Can he play the 3? Can he play the 1? He's doing it right now. We saw him play the 5 sometimes during his rookie season. So I think that's what it could be. They're perhaps trying to see what type of player do they have on that roster. And another big one is they're just so thin at the point guard spot. I get it. It's positionless basketball this season, and this era, this trend. I get all that, but numbers don't lie. Joe, statistically, Tre Jones is a better impact player on the plus-minus column when he is on that court. Wemby statistically tends to get more shots, but the other thing I can think of is Tre Jones is steadying force during tense moments. So let's just say, the perfect example is versus Dallas. Sure, they lost the home opener, but when he was inserted in that tense moment, that tight moment, he calmed the forces back. He kept the Spurs in play. You saw that versus Houston, the second game of the season, came in, helped lead the charge back and get that win. So to have that steady force coming off the bench, and also to maintain leads or to help the team come back from deficits. I mean, he hasn't really had a bad game. Okay, maybe the Indiana game was bad, but for the most part, he's been a plus. So to have that plus coming off the bench to energize the team, to steady the troops, those are a couple of reasons why I think you can maybe still play with Sochan at the starting point guard spot, and having Tre Jones off that bench. But Joe, you're done, right? You want this to end like now, right? Like tonight versus the Knicks, right? No more, right?
Yeah, no, I'm done with it, man. I think that needs to come to an end. We'll see what happens tonight versus the Knicks, but I expect more of the same. Sochan's just not going to look very good at that point guard position. It doesn't matter what Coach Pop does. It's just not a natural position to him. And I just feel bad for Jeremy at times, because we don't really know what this season could have been had he had played his natural position. His numbers are going to be skewed when it comes to his stats at the end of the season, because he's being called upon to be a point guard.
Yeah. We'll see how long it takes. I think, like I said, the L's start just stacking on up, and it came down to a difference of a turnover here, a turnover. The good news is, though, is that in tight games you're seeing more Tre Jones in that spot. You're seeing Sochan kind of moving away from that point guard spot, so that rotation is there. But still, we'll see if they'll continue this. Spurs fans are up in arms about it. Joe's up in arms about it. What about you? Hey, we'd like to hear from you. What do you think about Sochan and the starting point guard position? Failed experiment, keep it going. Where do you stand? Also, what do you think is ailing the Spurs heading into tonight's game versus New York? Joe, tell us what's going on in your world. 2 shots and on YouTube.
2 shots we haven't recorded for a bit, but I hope to get back and doing that. Been really busy at work, working super long hours, barely have time to go ahead and do the Alamo City Sportscast Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But we're going to be doing a new episode tomorrow of the Alamo City Sportscast. We're going to have Jeff Garcia come out and give us a segment there, talk all things Spurs. So that's going to be fun. Make sure you watch tomorrow.
Exactly. Joe, I heard a rumor that you're actually getting the Nobel Peace Prize. Is that true?
Not tonight.
Again, he is Joe Garcia, Two Shots Podcast. Follow him on X at Two Shots Podcast. Hey, we thank you for making Locked On Spurs your first listen each and every day. Free and available wherever you get podcasts, YouTube, Ken's 5 Plus app. The list goes on and on. Also, we have a partnership with SiriusXM Broadcasting, so go check that out. So, no excuse for you to not check out the Locked On Podcast Network and subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcast. So for Joe, the Nobel Peace Prize winning Garcia, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock on this episode of Locked On Spurs.